BYJU'S 9th and 10th grade channel. I'm your biology teacher Aishwarya, and in this particular video, we are going to be discussing all the important diagrams from the biology chapters in science. Now we have a total of 5 chapters that we are going to be discussing today, and I will be answering some of the questions that you had in your mind. What are the diagrams that I need to learn to draw for my board exam? What are the diagrams that I need to learn from which I know I will get diagram-based questions? And if I do get diagram-based questions, what type of questions will I get? So not to worry, I will be answering all of these questions in this video. So very quickly, do not forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button if you like the way we help you out for your boards. Now, of course, students, it is recommended that as you watch this video, please make sure you have your new revised rationalized textbooks along with you, because I will be giving you important figure numbers and page numbers to mark. So side by side, if you do this later on when you are revising, it will again be handy. So without wasting any more time, let's get started. Now, the first chapter that we're going to discuss, of course, is the most important chapter, that is life processes. And we know that there are various diagrams that are there in this particular chapter. So the first diagram that we have is figure 5.1 in page number 82. That is the cross section of the leaf. Now, especially if you look at last year's, right, that is 2020-23 sample paper, and in some sets of the board exam paper, we see that this particular diagram has come where they have identified these regions as say 1, 2 and 3, and you have to identify the part or the region in which photosynthesis would happen. So in this particular case, if you see, you don't need to learn how to draw the diagram, but you must be able to identify the different regions in this cross section, and they can ask you questions based on that. And as per last year, this has come for MCQ based questions, but you can expect maybe a 2-marker just in case, right? If they ask you to elaborate based on that diagram. But again, chances of an MCQ based coming of this is very, very high. And same goes for the diagram that is given above. So they could probably just label this part as X, and you have to identify what is X. So these are the kind of questions that you will get from this particular figure. Again, you don't need to learn how to draw the diagram. Now the next one that we have here is figure 5.3, that is the opening and closing of stomatal pore. Now, as you can see, this particular concept as to how the stomata opens and closes, or what is the mechanism behind it, is very important. And this concept can be asked for 2 marks for you to elaborate, and if it comes for 2 marks, you don't need to necessarily draw, right? Because otherwise, if they ask you to draw it with a supporting diagram, you can draw the stomata, but that's a very simple structure. But the chances of them asking you to draw is very, very less, right? And again, they can ask you MCQ questions. Again, just last year in 2022-23, if you check the, some of the board exam papers or some sets of it, you see that this particular diagram has come where they have labeled the parts as 1, 2, 3 and 4, and you have to pick the correct option from which all the parts are marked correctly. So that's why the labelings and identification is important for this particular diagram. Now, a small thing I want all of you to note, and I'm sure you must be wondering, ma'am, what about figure 5.2 and probably 5.4 that we're going to discuss? Now, as you can see, figures 5.2 and 5.4 are in association with your NCERT activities. Now, these activity diagrams that are there, they can come for identification, which means that they will ask you a question based on that activity, and you will have to identify or infer from that process. But on a drawing perspective, you don't need to necessarily learn how to draw. So this is a small note for all of you out there. Now moving on, we have figure 5.5, which is nutrition in amoeba, that is there in page number 84. Now, in this particular case also, chances of this diagram coming for drawing is very, very less, almost close to 0. And they can ask you MCQ based questions. But diagram based questions can come where they may give you one particular part of the process and they may ask you to identify the labeled part. So identification, so labeling is very important and identification is important. Maybe some compare contrast questions can come in your 2-mark questions where they'll ask you to identify the difference between amoeba and fungi, right? Nutrition in amoeba and fungi. Or objective questions can come also, right? Where you will have to identify which among these organisms will exhibit this kind of nutrition. So those are the possible questions that you will get from this particular topic. Now we will move on to figure 5.6. Now, as you can see, figure 5.6 is very important because here we're talking about the human alimentary canal or the human digestive system. Now, students, they will very rarely ask you to draw the human digestive system. So here, drawing should take second preference. But labeling is very important. The fact that you are able to identify which part is an esophagus, which part is stomach, which part is small intestine, all of those things are important. Because what they could ask you is, they could probably point to this part and identify it as X and ask you what is the juice, right? Or what enzyme is produced in part that is labeled X. So understanding all the parts, identification here is very important, and you can get 2 mark, 3 mark questions, and in some cases 5 mark, but 5 mark is again very rarely, right? Objective questions in section A, you can get this, so please be careful that you learn how to identify the parts that are labeled. Now we will move on to figure 5.8, which is the breakdown of glucose by various pathways. Now this flowchart is very, very important, students, because they can ask you a 3 mark question where they will ask you to draw this particular flowchart. So here, as you can see, either they can give you the flow chart where maybe some parts are not marked properly and they'll probably give this as X and Y, and you have to identify what is X and Y. So that is one possibility. Another possibility is where they will ask you to draw. And just last year, in 2022-23, this particular question has come where in one of the set, they were asked to draw the flow chart. So please be prepared to draw the flow chart or elaborate on these steps, right? It is there in page number 88. Now we will move on to next diagram that is there, which is figure 5.9, that is the human respiratory system, that is there in page 90. Now, if you analyze, right, our team has analyzed the past 10 years papers, and if you have a look at it, on very rare occasions, right, I would say probably out of 10 years, in 1 or 2 years, they've actually asked to draw the human respiratory system. But I will be honest with you. If you see, CBSE has decided, right, CBSE has said that we will be leaning more towards competency, which means chances of them actually asking you to draw the diagram of the human respiratory system is very, very less. But here they can ask you MCQ based questions, right? So MCQ based questions can come where they will give you 4 options of the pathway of air and you'll have to identify the correct order of organs, right? So that is going to be one possible question that can come. Or else they can ask you the importance of maybe, you know, what is the function of the rib cage, or they could ask you some specific functions like how are the lungs designed to maximize gaseous exchange, so on and so forth. But here, mainly the alveoli diagram is important because a lot of questions come based on gaseous exchange. So here, if you learn how to draw the cross section of alveoli, which is pretty simple, it's just an air sac surrounded by blood capillaries. If you learn how to draw this, it is more than enough, right? That diagram can support your answer in case if they ask you, let's say for 3 marks, right? So again, a lot of 2 mark, 3 mark questions can come from this. 4 mark very rarely, right? But 2 mark, 3 mark for sure. Yes? So alveoli diagram is something that I would focus upon. Now we will move on to the next one, which is figure 5.1, that is a schematic sectional view of the human heart. Now many students out there think that human heart is important because we need to learn how to draw the diagram. Now please understand that the chances of human heart coming for a diagram, like where they will ask you 3 mark question on just drawing this diagram, is close to not happening, right? We see that they will not ask you to draw the human heart. But yes, they will give you the diagram, they will ask you to identify important blood vessels, they will ask you to identify important chambers, right? They can ask you questions which is based on this, like why is the human heart 4-chambered, or why is it divided into a right side and a left side? So these are some possible questions that can come from this particular topic. Now next diagram is a slightly important diagram, which is the schematic representation of transport and exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide, effectively your double circulation. Now this particular diagram can come, right? They can ask you 3 mark question, they can ask you 5 marks on this, where they'll ask you to explain the process of double circulation. Now if at all you get this particular question, this is one diagram that you need to learn to draw. Or again, mostly this particular topic needs to be represented in a schematic view, right? So this schematic view is what you all have to learn, right? As to with the help of a flow chart, you support your diagram for double circulation. Now here labelings are important, so making sure that you are all labeling the important blood vessels, you are labeling the chambers, all of this is super important. So this diagram, right, and also mentioning that this is the heart, this is also very, very important. So please make sure that you star mark this. Now we will move on to the next image that is there, which is figure 5.12, right? So this is figure 5.12, which is the movement of water during transpiration in a tree. Now again, this is Chances of this diagram coming is very slim, right? For drawing, they will not ask you to draw the diagram. They can give you the diagram and they'll ask you to identify what process is happening here. So you just need to write or mark the option as transpiration. So this right here again is an MCQ based question. So please make sure it's there in page number 95. Now next up we have figure 5.13, that is the excretory system in human beings. Now again this right there, this particular diagram is there in page number 96. Now in this diagram, as you can all see, they can ask you or they can give you the diagram and you will have to identify which are the parts mentioned. So identification is crucial. Now here we've seen very rare questions come from here wherein they've asked you to maybe draw the kidney. So drawing excretory system is also very slim, right? So again MCQ based questions, maybe some 2 mark or 3 mark questions can come. But again, because when it comes to excretory system, the most important diagram here is that of nephron. Right? So nephron they can ask you MCQ based questions. They can ask you questions based on urine formation, and they can talk about what is, they can do a compare contrast with respect to nephron and alveoli. So structure, because both of them perform important functions, you need to make sure that you are able to compare and contrast the structure and function of alveoli and nephron. And that can come for 2 or 3 marks. But drawing diagram of nephron is not needed because again they'll ask you steps of urine formation, and again that will never be asked where you are asked to support with a diagram. So you don't need to necessarily learn the diagram as to how to draw. But yes, labeling the part is very important. Identification in all cases is important. So with this students, if you see, we are done with discussing all the important diagrams from life processes. Now as you can see, life processes has the maximum number of diagrams when compared to say the remaining other chapters which relatively have only few important ones. So let's move on to chapter number 2, that is control and coordination. Now in this particular chapter also we see that there are 3 broad topics. We have nervous system, we have coordination in plants, and we have the hormonal system. So when we start with the nervous system, the first diagram that we have is there in page number 101, that is the structure of neuron. Very important diagram on a board examination front where they can ask you questions based on signal transmission, and they may ask you to draw the structure of neuron. So this diagram you have to learn, right? You have to learn how to draw the diagram, and you will have to learn to identify in case a diagram based question comes. MCQ based questions can come, 2 mark questions can come, in some cases 3 marks, but again very rare that 3 mark questions will come, right? Now next up we have 6.1 part B, which is the neuromuscular junction. Now here this portion is relevant because this can come as a diagram based question for identification, and they may ask you an objective question on this. But again, they will not ask you to draw a neuromuscular junction. They'll ask you to draw a neuron but not a neuromuscular junction. Identification is more than enough. Moving on, we have in page number 103 the reflex arc. Now reflex arc diagram, that is figure 6.2, is super important because again chances of questions coming from reflex arc, it could come as MCQ based questions, or you can get 3 mark questions where you will be asked to elaborate the reflex arc. This diagram is important. Now again, with respect to identifying the important parts, identification is also necessary because they could give you this diagram and then they'll ask you a question based on it. Like for 2 marks or 5 marks, they could ask you that. 5 marks again very rare, but 2 marks they could definitely ask you. In case, if you have to draw this, one diagram to learn is this particular diagram that is there in our textbook. But most often they'll not ask you to draw this. They'll ask you to represent it schematically, which means with the help of a flow chart. And if you have to do that, you can just draw a very simple flow chart and make sure that the arrows are pointed correctly. So the schematic diagram is something that I would recommend because chances of them asking you to draw this is higher. But either ways, learn the previous one also. That is important. Moving on, we have figure 6.3, which is the human brain. That is there in page number 104. And this, of course, is the doubt that many kids have, right? Ma'am, should I learn to draw the structure of the human brain? Students, it's just like the human heart. You are not going to be asked to draw the human brain at any point, right? Very less chances that they will ask you to do this. But labeling is very important because we have seen over the previous years that identification is important and you can get questions based on that. Identify the part labeled X. What is the function of this part labeled X? So here what would happen is eventually your identification skills, right? Are you able to identify the parts correctly? If you've identified it correctly, are you able to, state the functions clearly? So that is what CBSE will be testing you upon, not whether you have diagram based skills in this, right? So here, of course, you don't need to draw. Don't get worried. Don't take tension on learning to draw the diagram, but try to learn the different parts that are there. So with this, we will move on to next two diagrams, which are easy peasy ones. That is 6.5 and 6.6, which is one response to light and response to gravity, or that is geotropism. Now, in both cases, it is there in page 107. You don't need to learn how to draw. But over the years, we have seen that questions have come. Right? Questions have come where they've asked, why is the phenomena happening in the case of this diagram 6.5? They'll ask, why is the plant bending towards the light? Or in this case, they will, give you 4 options where they will say, identify the correct diagram in which geotropism is taking place. So these are the potential questions you can get. So learning these, identifying the important labels, they are important, but not learning how to draw. Again, in this particular case, mainly MCQ. But if this comes as an elaboration question, they'll ask you basically on the mechanism of function of, or how auxin works basically. That could come for 2 marks, not more than that. Then the last diagram that we have here is, of course, of endocrine glands in males and females. That is there in page 110. Don't need to learn how to draw. But again, like I said, identification is a must. So learn all the important glands that are mentioned here, because they could give you this diagram. Label maybe the thyroid gland and ask you what is part A, what is the hormone secreted by part A, what would happen if there's a deficiency in the hormone secreted. So this could be some kind of potential questions that could come from these kind of diagrams. Now, of course, with this we are done with control coordination and we will move on to chapter number 3. Now students, so far if you have enjoyed the fact that I'm able to give you a clear-cut clarity on what type of questions to expect, what all diagrams to learn, don't forget to hit the like button on this video and don't forget to hit the subscribe button, because we here at BYJU'S believe that making your academic life smoother is our sole purpose, right? So with this we will move on to chapter number 3, that is how do organisms reproduce. Now this chapter, like life process, is a very big chapter, because here we have topics on reproduction, necessity or why reproduction is important. Then we also have types of reproduction where we have asexual reproduction, sexual reproduction in plants and in human beings. And then of course we have reproductive health. So it's a very wide chapter. But when you talk about diagrams, there are some important diagrams that can come even for drawing in this chapter. So the first diagram that we have is figure 7.1 and 7.1, which has binary fission in amoeba and leishmania. Now here again, they will not ask you to draw. Again, but chances of them asking you to draw is very, very less. But here, they can ask you this diagram, and this has come last year in 2022-23. If you look at some of the set, this particular diagram has come where you have to identify, right, where nuclear division is taking place, or where splitting of cells has started to happen. So they will give you this and 4 options and you will have to identify. So MCQ based questions have come. Or else what they will do, they will give you this diagram and they'll ask you what is the process that is happening. So identification for these particular topics is important, so please star mark the same. Now next up we have figure 7.3, that is regeneration in planaria, that is there in page number 117. Now over the years what we have observed is that this diagram can come for drawing. So either what they will ask you, they will give you the diagram and they'll ask you what will happen at the end of it, complete the diagram. That they have asked a few years back, probably 5 or 6 years back, such kind of questions have come. Or else what they will ask you to explain the process of regeneration in planaria and elaborate with a diagram. So here 3 mark, 5 mark questions can come from this topic. So everyone please star mark this, right? Very, very important. So we've seen over a period of time that this diagram has been repetitively asked. So do not forget to learn how to draw. And it's a very simple one. Next up, we have budding in hydra, that is there in page 117, figure 7.4. This again has been asked where they've asked to draw the diagram in some cases, but it's always good to be on the safer side where you know how to draw. So they will ask this for 2 marks, maybe in some cases 3 marks, or they can ask you MCQ based questions where they'll give you the diagram and you'll have to identify. So identification in all diagrams is a key. Same goes for figure 7.5, which is bryophyllum or leaf of bryophyllum with buds. We have seen this come first in section A especially, so identifying and making sure that you are able to understand, right, what is happening here. That is very important. So MCQ based questions can come from this. Next up we have figure 7.7, which is the longitudinal section of flower. Now this is there in page 120. Now here, as you can see, in some rare cases we have seen where they have asked to draw either the structure of stamen, right? They've asked to draw stamen or pistil, or in some cases they've asked to draw the longitudinal structure of flower. So again, MCQ based questions can come, long format questions or subjective questions can come as well for this particular topic. So learn to draw the diagram. It's a very easy diagram to draw. It's not too complicated. If at all it comes, it is simple and it will be scoring. Now we have the next one. Now this particular diagram surprisingly can come even in chemotropism. So chemotropism is a concept we've learned in control coordination, which is the response to chemicals. And growth of pollen grain is something that we see as an example of chemotropism. So this diagram can come as a question there, or it can come as a question with respect to pollen, germination of pollen on the stigma. Now again, it would be better that you learn how to draw the diagram, because we have seen in some instances where this diagram has been asked. So learn to draw the diagram for this. Again, you can get MCQ based questions. So like gave you an example for chemotropism, that is an MCQ based question. Or they can ask you a little bit on elaboration of what exactly happens. It could be with respect to pollination and germination of pollen tube. They could club it and they could ask you this. So that's why this diagram is very important. Don't forget to star mark. Now along with this you have figure 7.9, which is not there in this, but figure 7.9 also, that shows about germination of seed. They could ask you that diagram, but again not to draw. Identification is important there. Now we'll move on to the last diagram from this chapter, that is figure 7.10 and 7.11. Now please note, this is figure 7.10 is human male reproductive system, figure 7.11 is human female reproductive system. Now, over the years, we've seen that a lot of questions come from the female reproductive system and diagram-based questions, where they will mark parts as X, Y, Z, identify part X, Y, Z, what is the function of Y. Such type of questions come from female reproductive system. Male reproductive system, we have not seen so many questions come, but nonetheless, please learn how to identify the different parts. MCQ based questions can definitely come. And again, from male reproductive system, we've also seen a lot of assertion reason questions have come. So please make sure that you don't forget to star mark that. And of course, we see long format questions come from this particular topic. You don't need to learn how to draw. That is what is important. You should know the parts, but they will very rarely ask you to draw this. Next up, we have chapter number 4, which is heredity. Now, this chapter has very few diagrams. And even if they do give you diagrams for this, right? Let me tell you, they're all flowchart or they're schematic based diagrams. And they'll, there's a schematic representation of the question and you have to give the answer. Now, of course, in this year, that is 2023-24 sample paper, we have seen a question that is based on free and attached earlobes. And normally from heredity chapters, we see that 5-mark questions are common. Now, in 5 marks, it's not that there'll be one question and you get 5 marks for that. But in 5 marks, there'll be various subparts also. And it's pretty scoring. So here we see that figure 8.2 is important because this is something that we've observed in this year's sample paper. So don't forget to just observe these kind of diagrams that are there. You don't need to learn how to draw. Same goes for figure 8.4 that represents law of dominance, that is there in page 131. Now, this is the flowchart that I was talking to you about. So this kind of flow chart where they talk about different generations and what goes on, like basically what would happen to the progeny if this parent is like this. Those are the kind of questions that you get. And I'm telling you in very simple words, right? So in case of so far, if you have not started the heredity chapter when you are watching this video, don't get worried. It's very simple and easy. All you need to know is how to represent the flow chart. MCQ based questions will definitely come. You will get long format questions also. Whether it's 2 mark, 3 mark, 5 mark, you will get long format questions from this particular concept that you see on the screen right now. That is law of dominance. Next up, we have independent inheritance of 2 separate traits based on shape and color of seeds, right? That is also there in page 131. And this is what we often call as a dihybrid cross, right? So this is basically the example of a dihybrid cross. Now, they may ask you to draw, right, or they may ask you to make a cross, But they will, if you have to make the cross also, you don't need to sit and color things and, make sure that it's represented as it is. You need to be able to make it in the schematic view, right? So whatever is mentioned here, you just need to make it in a table. So just make the table and go. And dihybrid cross is very important because we've seen that consecutively in every year, a few questions do come which is based on dihybrid cross. It could be MCQ, it could be long format questions also. But do not forget to learn, right? You just need to make the table. You don't need to make it colorful in the manner that you see in your textbook. Just a simplified form of the same. Now, last diagram that we have, it's very, very important. That is sex determination in human beings. Now, repeatedly, we've seen that this question has come, and sometimes they may ask you to make this in a flow chart manner. So this right here, what you see, you will have to learn and just make it as a simple flow chart. So this can come as MCQ where they'll ask you, right? If this kind of cross happens, what will you get? Or if it is XX, what is the nature of the offspring? And you will have 4 options from which you'll have to identify. So MCQ questions can come, or else they can ask you 3-mark questions where they'll ask you describe the process of sex determination in human beings. Now the best way to support that answer is by doing the flow chart, which is why I will recommend 100% that you learn sex determination and learn to make the flow chart for sex determination. Now, of course, we have our last chapter for today, which is our environment. Now, our environment is a very easy chapter, and again, we see that they will never really ask you to draw diagrams from our environment. But they could give you some diagrams. So, I could tell you what type of diagrams could come for your diagram-based questions. And we know with our environment, case-based questions are, for sure that it will come in your board exam. So here if you see the first diagram that we have is figure 13.1, which represents different food chains. Now they could give you this food chain and they could ask you, right, what is a producer in this, what is a consumer, what is a tertiary consumer here. They could ask you some questions, but again, chances are very rare. But here and there over previous years, we have seen some questions come up, which is why making sure that you know what is a food chain and what are the different levels in a food chain, they are very important. Now, another thing that's very important is the food web. Now, if you look at this year's sample paper, 2023-24, we have seen that a diagram is given from which some inference-based questions will be asked. What will happen if somebody goes missing from the food chain, right? So, or a food web, what would happen? So here, these are some questions that can come, or 5-mark questions could come as well, which would again be related to energy transfer or energy flow. So energy flow is very important because lot of questions, so one question for sure comes from flow of energy in an ecosystem. So here, understanding what is the flow of energy, what is the 1%, 10%, the 10% law is something you need to know. And you will get 5-mark, your case-based questions, right? So you will get 4-mark questions for the same with respect to this, or it can come with respect to maybe ozone formation, or it could come with respect to conserving our environment, right? So students, if you see end to end, we have discussed all the important diagrams, not just from one chapter, but from all the 5 chapters in biology. So now I hope, right, that you are feeling confident about what you need to study, how you need to study. Now, whenever you are watching this video, if you are watching this right before the board exams also, I wish you all the very best, right? I just want to make sure that you feel confident about your preparation and make sure that in biology, don't ever get scared looking at the diagrams. Biology is very simple and easy. Now, if you did enjoy this session and you stayed with me till the very end, do not forget to let me know in the comments of this video that you found this helpful. And BYJU'S 9th and 10th has always got you covered. So do not forget to hit the like button on this video and don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends. Hoping to see you all soon again. Up until then, take care, lots of love and bye-bye.